Araisi Ezerpils Archaeological Park. As you can see, I'm dressed a bit unusual, and the reason for that is that I'm going to tell you about unusual monument that were inhabited more than 1,000 years ago in the 9th century AD. But first I have to start with the tales. So in Latvian folklore there is many tales that tells us that once upon a time all the lakes flew in the air, and only when some person would guess their name they would lie down. But they weren't so thankful as we would like, and they let the person who guessed with their dry feet out, but themselves they were lying down on the constructions, the houses, the villages, the castles that were man-made. And archaeologist Jānis Apels thought maybe there is some kind of truth inside those tales, so he dived into all those lakes. He had tails and discovered unusual monument that is placed on an island in more than 10 lakes in Latvia. Today we are in Araisi, next to Araisi Lake, and here is the reconstruction of Araisi Lake Fortress. And imagine how it would be to live on the lake island in the Iron Age. So let's get closer and see how it looks like today in this quite cold winter day. So those people who inhabited lake fortresses were ancient Latgallians. That was the widest tribe in Latvian territory in this time. And about the 8th century they started to migrate and go further north in Latvian territory to find new places to live. And they came here in Āraišu vicinity, but this place was not empty. There were other tribes as Latgallians, as Livs, so they needed to build their living place safe. And actually pillaging was everyday thing in Iron Age. So first, when you choose a place to live, you think about the safety. So some of the Latgallians, actually he maybe thought a little bit out of the box. He decided that they wouldn't build their fortress on a hill fort, as it was common in this time. They decided that maybe building their home on the low island in the lake would be faster and maybe safer when they have the water barrier. But they did it very cleverly, and before they started to build their homes on the island, they built the foundation grid that heightened the island so that all this snow would melt and all the ice would melt, the water level would rise, and they wouldn't like the result as the water comes inside their homes. So, and of course, in addition to the lake barrier, they need to build those defense systems as well. And those are built only last year, so those of you who haven't visited us more than a year, you can come and see how you like it. So you can get a better view how the ancient Latgallians lived in this settlement. So here we are in the settlement. As you can see, there are many little houses. So there are one-room houses, and all of them are outer buildings like this. So they are used for storage. As you can see, there are a birch bark in this one, and birch bark actually was widely used for containers, for roof covering, and different kinds of ways. Maybe if you know some other ones, you can write in comments, and let's see if they used in Iron Age as well. And I would like to tell you about this place as well. So you can see actually how clever they built those log buildings. This connection here is called jaw corner connection. So to build a wall, you need a yoke beam with 2 holes inside. and you put 2 poles into the holes and put 1 log on another and put the other yoke beam on, and you have a wall ready. For the perpendicular wall, you need just make a gap in the top of the log and put on the inner pole. And so the house is ready, only roof needs to be put on. And I think it's very, very clever. And what I admire about ancient Latgallians, they used what nature has given to them to make their lives comfortable. For example, this one holds the roof, and it's a spruce with a root. So the fiber of the timber actually holds all the weight of the roof. And as we move further, we can take a look inside some of the houses, and some of them have their interior fully reconstructed, so you can see how it would look inside. There will be a clay stove, clay flooring, but in this particular house you can see some interesting objects that are quite unusual. So the one with the ropes and wooden seat and a hook is used by a beekeeper. So why is that? Beekeepers they climbed up the trees to get honey and wax, because in Iron Age the bees were kept in the top of the trees, in the holes, man-made or nature-made. So the beekeeper needed to use this instrument to climb safely up to gather the wax and the honey. And by the end of the room, you can see the vise that is like a square with a letter V inside. So that is the honey press to get out the only sweetener, honey, out of the wax. That is very, very useful in a household. Actually, myself, to prepare to meet you in the winter, I have waxed my leather boots to keep my feet warm and dry. So, and in some of the houses we can actually climb in, and there's advice for you if you visit us. First you need to put your leg inside and then the head, and you will climb out without a headache. So here you can see maybe the site, how it would look like in the winter time when the fire is on in the stove. And you can see that there's a bit smoky inside because those stoves hadn't a chimney and people lived in the smoke rooms. And to move around, you can see that there are some bunks for lying down and sleeping, some shelves to put your things on. There would be some hooks to hook your clothing and so on. So this house actually is like ready to someone to move in. So you can imagine what would you put on the shelves if you would live in a place like this. So some of the houses, they didn't have complete outer buildings, but more like porches. And here I have some things that were used by the people who lived there. And let's see, what can I show you? So in the winter, of course, you have the main thing to do to clothe yourself is to feel warm. But ancient Latgallians actually very liked to look bright and shiny, and they used bronze to do that. First, they would weave inside a bronze into the fabric, and those woolen shawls actually are the nicest things that only Latgallian women can make, and they were very good at it. So I will cover this one on my shoulders so you can take a look how it would look. I think I'm much nicer looking already, but it wasn't enough for ancient Latgallians. They needed some nice jewelry as well. But sorry, men, I have a woman jewelry mostly here. So you need to put a neck ring on your neck as well. So those with the flattened terminals and very nice ornamentation, they're used only by Latgallians as well. So on both hands you would put those spiral-like bracelets that looks good on 9th century sleeves, and I think that they look very nice on the 21st century sleeves as well. So what do I have here? There are some head crowns that were used to look nicer. This one is simpler. That is made from bronze rings. That one I like more actually, because there are some pattern made by the rings, so you can put in your head. I will try to do that for you to see how it looks like. And there it is. But of course I would like to do it more in the summertime than in the winter time, so I will put my hat on. And there are some other small things. They were bracelets like that with animal head terminals. So they didn't have a button, so to connect the pieces of clothing together they used brooches, and the fingers were decorated with those spiral-like rings like this. And what else do I have in my basket? Let's see. So of course everyone likes to eat well, and Latgallians use different kind of the dishes. This one is made of wood. If you would like to drink or take a sip, you would use a cup like this. As you can see, you can hang it somewhere on the container where the water or other kind of drink is in. And of course widely used was clay vessels, and they were different kind of sizes and different kind of decoration. As you can see, this one is very, very smooth, but with a nice form actually. And this one is decorated in a special way. And maybe you can write in comments if you know how it was decorated, and I will try to answer you online or afterwards in the comments. So here is a bit of hint to that. And yes, and for you to guess, of course, I can show you some interesting figurines that we believe was used as a toys. So I will just put them on the shawl, and you can try to guess what kind of living creatures are depicted here. So first is this. Second one is not so easy as this one. I guess you already know. So it's like that. Many of the visitors have problems guessing what is this one, but it's a very nice creature that we very much love, especially in the weddings and thinking about the wedding cakes. And this one is nice and furry creature that lives in the forest. And as for the everyday life, actually maybe even today you are a bit sad that you can't go to the shops and buy your clothing. What would 9th century people do? They would create their clothing themselves because they didn't have a choice. They had to create something to feel warm. And it starts with an instrument like this, just called a spindle. So you have a little stick, and there's a clay whirl put on, and it helps you to spin or turn the yarn so it would be strong enough, and you can put this in the weaving loom. Another technique how to make something useful for your life is tablet weaving. So it looks a bit more complicated because you have squares like this, many of them, and you have to turn them in one time all together. Those are called the weaving tablets, and as you can see, you can make a ribbon-like products like belts or other things for fastening, and of course this could be useful for starting a weaving process and starting to weave a fabric. And I have just one thing that would that men maybe are more interested in. So all those buildings are made with this narrow blade axe, which is very widely used. You can chop a tree with that, and you can make every gap you need to build a house. So as I told you before, and here in this house you can see that clay vessels actually were used not only to store the food or eat the food, but they actually were put inside the oven to make food. And we still do that. We boil the porridge with rustic vessels like this. So if you come and visit, we could share a meal and eat together. I want to talk about this. And here you can take a look of the streets of the Lake Fortress. And as you can see, some of them are wider, some of them are quite narrow. And in this place, it is believed that lived approximately 80 people in one time. And in one house, there would be 8 people living. And that would be a family of 3 generations. That would be grandparents, parents and children, and maybe some other relatives. Oh, but this house, you can't see anything inside because there's a glass that we don't know in Iron Age, but in 21st century it just looks nice. But inside this house with a secret is a jeweler's house, where you can see the tools that are used by a jeweler to make all this nice jewelry, as I told you before. So people lived there for approximately 100 years, generation by generation. They were mostly farmers, and they made all by themselves. They were gardening, they were keeping cattle, and making all the stuff for everyday life for themselves. And they were rebuilding the the fortress 5 times. And after the last time, it was destroyed actually by an attack and burned down, as it can be seen in a layer burned down. But that was not the only reason why they didn't continue to live in the lake fortresses. There was this flying lake, as I told you in the beginning. So there was weather changes, the ice were melting, all the rivers and lakes were filling with the water. So the water level in the lake whole year long was quite high, and it was not comfortable to live anymore. So ancient Latgallians decided to live somewhere else and not to rebuild the place. And they lived somewhere, but of course they were telling their children, their grandchildren, about the time they lived on that island, and that water disturbed them, and they had to go somewhere else to live. And that turned into the tales about the flying lakes. So when you will visit us, you can see all of that. You will be able to explore all the Lake Fortress, but we have more of that. So in our park you can see the medieval castle, you can see the reconstructions of stone and Bronze Age buildings that are built before the Lake Fortress, and of course we have very nice visitor center with an exhibition with all original stuff that were found here in the excavations. So you're very welcome to visit us and tell a story. Bye!